You're already there.
This, like, we're running out of good ideas to talk
Yeah,
about.
K62 is
talking presentation-wise,
it's
which is
too fucking type versus
Yeah, presentation.
Alright, you should be good to go now.
All right, should I begin now?
God, shut the fuck up!
Alrighty, welcome. So, as you can probably know by now, this is a presentation on MediaWiki. I'm Drew Stevens. This is my second year in LUG and second year at ASU. And, sorry. So let's go. So this is a rough outline of the wiki. We'll be first just talking about what is MediaWiki, the history of MediaWiki, and the structure of it. And then we'll go over a little bit on how an installation of MediaWiki works and the basic usage of MediaWiki, followed by a few of the reasons why MediaWiki, despite being the most common solution, can get annoying. And then finally, we'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end, assuming this doesn't take ridiculously long, and we'll see. All right, so what is MediaWiki? So, to put it simply, MediaWiki is an open source wiki software that is GPL2 licensed, and it was created by Wikipedia in 2002 and is currently developed by the Wikimedia Foundation that runs Wikipedia. It's basically the wiki software. Like, others technically exist, like FOS Wiki and stuff, but like, if it's a classic Wikipedia style interface, it is probably powered by MediaWiki. I will almost bet my right arm for it. And so, a brief history of MediaWiki. So, the whole concept of a wiki started around 1995 with WikiWikiWeb. Basically, everybody copied this. Like, they just looked at the software and like, I'm going to make my own clone of it. And one of the popular clones was UseModWiki, which was written in Perl and released in 1999. This was the original software that Wikipedia started on, but they ran into scalability issues. Spoiler alert, UseModWiki used text files as its storage format. Very quickly, they realized, oh crap, we're going to need a real database for this thing. And so that is why they started developing MediaWiki in 2002 using PHP and an SQL database, probably MySQL, I'm guessing based on the history of the project. And so then in 2003, it officially got called MediaWiki, and it's been continuously developed since then, and is currently on version 1.44. So who uses MediaWiki? So examples include, as I obviously mentioned, Wikipedia, FandomWiki uses it, and I think I can predict how most of us feel about FandomWiki. And then there's Mirahese, ArchWiki, Ballotpedia, and one you guys probably don't know, but I had to include as an Easter egg, This Might Be a Wiki, which is probably the main fan wiki for They Might Be Giants. It's stuck using a 10-year-old version of MediaWiki, but it runs MediaWiki nonetheless. So, why should we bother with MediaWiki, though? So, in general, running a wiki is just a really good tool for organizing various information, whether it's in a hyperlinked way, whether it's for your online community or just for yourself. Like, I haven't created any huge sci-fi worlds, but I attempted to create a sci-fi world once, and MediaWiki was how I organized the information. The lack of that sci-fi world getting complete is probably more to do with my motivation and less to do with the quality of MediaWiki. Also, another reason you would choose MediaWiki over another wiki is, well, one, it's probably the most widely deployed wiki software with full wiki functionality and isn't just like documentation. And the other thing is it's a very long-running, well-funded project, so it's probably not going to go away anytime soon. I might also add, though, while Wikipedia can be used for documentation, honestly, I find usually the tier list of documentation is usually something like a read the doc style documentation does end up being the better documentation. And if the code documentation for something is hosted on MediaWiki, you should be a little bit scared. though, because I've just found from experience, not because of any fault of MediaWiki, like, there's usually something very scary about hosting code documentation on MediaWiki, so... But that's just a random anecdotal thing. The other thing about MediaWiki is it's very customizable. You can completely change the look of the wiki with custom skins, and then there's extensions, templates, a whole crap ton of stuff. So, any questions so far? Yeah, I'm just going to get through this blurb, but then we should get through the interesting part. So, the architecture of MediaWiki, it's a pretty standard lamp stack for the most part, with some caveats. Doesn't technically need MariaDB. It supports multiple... It actually supports multiple databases. So we can see some of them listed here, but MariaDB is by far the best supported. But you could run it on something else. I frequently use SQLite support when I just need to set up a quick development instance, like if I'm writing an extension or something, because if you use SQLite, you technically don't need Apache either. You could run another server and like literally just use the PHP command line to start a test MediaWiki instance. Obviously would never be used for production, but good enough for development. Finally, you very much technically don't need Linux, but maybe unless it's a BSD, good luck, buddy. So that's the basic what it runs on, and then this is the directory structure of MediaWiki. So we have the extensions directory, which is pretty self-explanatory. Images directory is where your file uploads are stored, so a little bit of a misnomer. It doesn't just include images. It includes like PDF files, or if you were stupid enough to allow exe files, which that is not enabled by default, luckily. And then, so resources obviously stores resources, and assets usually is the default location you would put your wiki logo in. And then skins, again, self-explanatory. And finally, local settings.php is the main config file. So now we're going to get to installing MediaWiki. I've been blabbing for a while, so I'm hoping we can actually do crap, but a lot of this doing crap is contingent on getting a Docker install set up. So if you either can't or don't want to get a Docker install set up, which I understand both reasons, then I guess I'll just show you this stuff. So before we go, important note, MediaWiki is actually in the official repository of pretty much all the major distributions. I feel like it might be in NixOS, I could be wrong, but it's in Debian, it's in Fedora, it's in OpenSUSE. However, I feel like installing it, while I'm usually a repo shell and will go for the version, whatever's in the Debian repos, I make an exception for MediaWiki because, for one thing, a lot of the documentation is going to be a little bit different. I mean, not majorly different, but it's like, it changes the directory structure. So, for instance, local settings.php under Debian is moved into Etsy, and it just makes a lot of things really weird. And also MediaWiki upgrades, I think, need to be done very carefully and intentionally. And so having your package manager, having to like wait to do an upgrade might mean like you end up having to hold back updates for your package manager. And I would rather be able to wait to update my MediaWiki install independent of my package manager. And so I thus actually just prefer downloading it directly from MediaWiki and doing it as the MediaWiki developers suggest. So like I said, this is going to be Docker based, so if you want to follow along, this is a little thing I have a little bit of a thing if you want to try speedrunning installing Docker Compose. I've tested it under Debian, Fedora, and OpenSUSE, and basically good luck in NixOS. So, is anyone going to take a second for this, or should I just keep going? All right. Yeah. I mean, it's not the clone you have to worry about. It's probably the Docker pull.
You're saying good luck, NixOS?
He's doing it right
Nix
now.
could just run any container.
This is true, but also, like, getting Docker set up on Nix is kind of
Yeah, I was thinking about including instructions for NixOS, and then I just looked at it and I'm like, if someone's motivated enough to run NixOS and really wanted to, then they'd figure it out. So I just decided to leave it at instructions for traditional package managers. But they're pretty much called, yeah, for those who don't have Docker installed, and if you're installing it, they're pretty much called that verbatim in pretty much all the major distros with traditional package managers. Like, so yeah, just tell me when you guys are done doing all the git cloning. And yeah, and then I think let me just check real quick. I should also have it cloned already. Yep, okay.
Usually would make a silver account. You remember that shit, right? Okay. People know what I'm talking about, right?
That's why I got up to, like, BB, like, 22, because I always made my username BB, and it would make new auto-generate one.
Alrighty. Yes, just let me know when you're done with the git cloning. I think the Docker Compose is on the next. Did I actually Okay, yeah, the Docker Compose is technically on the next slide, but I'm assuming everyone who wants to follow along has already done the git clone and start getting Docker set up if they want to. So yeah, so are you guys ready, or should I wait a second? All right. So now you'll go to that MediaWiki download link. You could probably also maybe like try to use the link to like the GitHub repo, and I think I have the link in there, but I mean, it should be pretty simple to type that in. And we're gonna go with the LTS version for this presentation because I like LTS. This presentation, as we're only like one version, as the latest version is only one version ahead, it probably won't make a huge difference for this presentation, but to make sure everything's exactly the same, I would prefer if you were to use the LTS version if you're following along. It's more like if you use the latest version, for the purpose of the presentation, you technically do so at your own risk. I mean, the latest version is still meant to be a stable version in production use, but...
What are the little black characters in the presentation?
Oh, these, like, the one where the W is? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's just that's a folder icon from Font Awesome. Yeah, from the Logic Font Awesome package.
It looks like you censored out a part.
Or you had a
Yeah, maybe
put like a space before it or something.
I feel like you probably want, like, the full one, the hollow, like,
yeah.
Font Awesome.
Well, I wrote most of this, like, about a month ahead. Like,
It's okay.
the other half of it, I was pretty much just rushing it in the past week. Like, the probably last 18 slides or so, and then I was going back and making revisions to make sure it was as consistent as possible. So, yeah. Oh, wait, I should probably be doing the Docker Compose as well, I realized, if I'm going to follow along. Yeah, I'm going to... Oh, yeah, the Docker file is just because we need a few PHP extensions. So... yeah, so like the Docker Compose should get everything up for you. That's why there's a Docker file. Is MediaWiki variously needs and recommends a few extensions. Yeah, I'm just gonna get my Docker Compose running. Oh wait, let me download. Okay. Oh wait. Yeah. Yeah, okay, whatever. There is a giant button on the front page.
Where you open the folder you include that, sometimes it doesn't. It always seems to be like you don't. It's always the opposite. Library. Because it forces me to into a library because right now.
Wait, why is whatever? I'll just use the regular terminal. Wait, okay. So yeah, just a point of convention. Yeah, make sure that when you've downloaded MediaWiki and extracted it, yeah, just again, yeah, make sure it's called W instead of MediaWiki dash whatever, because I mean, while we're not going to be using this in production, it is just generally good practice. Like W is a pretty typical name for the folder because, well, one, that's what I have it set to in the Docker Compose, but two, you generally just want to keep the name version agnostic. So yeah. Oh wait, yeah. Let me do Docker Compose up. Yeah, so I'm assuming you got the steps down, so I'm just going to leave the Docker Compose, or I'll go back to the presentation.
Doing anything to see, it's always annoying. Because everyone has their own fucking tool chain and it doesn't fucking work. Like 0% of the time. So now, let's see if I can if I include.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you didn't install MediaWiki in the container?
Yes, because the MediaWiki Docker container is actually not meant for production use. It is meant purely for development. Oh wait, you mean? Oh wait, you mean?
File did you not download and install MediaWiki?
I didn't install it directly in the. Oh yeah, I didn't install it directly in the container because it's just generally a good idea to be able to directly control your MediaWiki with your normal native system file manager. Like it's partly just for easy access because we will need to edit local settings.php and install an extension at some point. So like, yeah, you could technically do it in the Docker container, but it's much better to just mount a directory because it just ends up being easier with how MediaWiki is managed. But yeah, there is an official MediaWiki Docker container, but it is for development. But yeah, again, my choice to mount a MediaWiki folder instead of downloading it directly in the container is also personal preference, and you can do whatever the heck you want. If yeah. Let's see, how's my Docker pull going? Yep.
Because it requires me to have it in this specific fucking folder.
Okay, let me check. Oh, that's why it was being weird. It's because my VS Code window was set to 1920 by 1200, even though I have the screen set to 1080p. Yeah, alright, yeah. How's your guys' Docker Compose going? Yep. Lots of building, unfortunately, because, yeah, again, there's a few extensions that are in, like, the PHP registry that it can do decently fast, but but there's a few that has to build from source, but first has to install all the packages for, and yeah, it has to do it through apt too, because the Apache PHP image is built on Debian, so yeah.
There's no shortage of people.
I love the Java. It's just expensive though. Yeah.
We're talking about MediaWiki. We're not hungry. They probably have a store. Yeah, the Java's expensive, but it is actually good. You should have heard what Corey told me the other day. He said he might be migrating away from MediaWiki because it uses a database. And I was like, what? It makes it harder to back up. And I was like, what do you mean harder to back up?
It's like one command to like an XML file or an SQL file.
I understand, like, maybe wanting to have a Git repo text file only wiki, right? Like just a wiki with top-down pages posted on Git. But he wants it, like, accessible on his phone. Yeah, like, all that stuff. Git just is.
Like,
You know, you should wait till you hear from him. That might be this is true. I don't know what his requirements are, but it does sound like
We're specifically doing plain text that you want to be very portable, that makes more sense to you.
yeah. Yeah, because if it was for a personal thing, I could actually get if you just wanted to have a set of like markdown files or whatever. But like, I think for like a community thing where you need lots of people editing it, MediaWiki is probably still the best tool for the job, and I still use it personally because I find, like, I mean, the database is again pretty much just one SQL command to back up, and so.
Doesn't like PyCharm just use MDX?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Doesn't PyCharm and all their wiki or all their technical documentation just use like MDX or something? What's MDX? Markdown extended. It's like texture. Oh, yeah. It's Markdown with React in it.
Yeah, they probably do, but like, yeah, again, it's a different kind of thing because I think if you are hosting documentation for your project, there are better, more optimized tools than MediaWiki. Like, again, like I said, even though MediaWiki probably isn't specifically horrible for hosting documentation, it's like if a project is using MediaWiki as the documentation for its like code library, you're probably about to be in for a rough one, and you're probably about to run across pages that haven't been updated since like 2013.
Is like the rest of this presentation like how to use MediaWiki?
Basically, yes.
So can I just ask questions about how it works?
Yeah, I'm assuming everyone who wants to use it now has their Docker Compose up. So yeah, now, yep, we're going to go to localhost 8080, unless you change the port for some reason. So yeah, it'll be localhost 8080, and you should all be on this screen.
I do not have permission.
You have to sudo for Docker if you're not in the group.
No. Yeah, I'm definitely.
I thought you used Podman.
All my Podman containers. No, I don't use Podman, and all my DistroBox containers I run as root.
So yeah. Anyhow, yeah, just tell me, for those who are continuing, who's on this screen. All right. Oops, Ariel. Okay, I think he's bringing it up. Okay. Oh gosh, it's doing the whole poll all over again. Like,
I'm just adding myself to mine.
yeah.
How do I do that?
I think I have the command. Oh wait, no, I just say add yourself to the Docker group.
It works just fine to use solo stuff.
Yeah.
No, but then I need to rebuild everything.
Docker, it runs everything as the Docker user anyway. Without having permission to access the Docker user.
What's that Japanese? What's that run?
Is the group just called Docker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
At least it is on Debian.
It's called Docker and everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't think there's any reason why it would be called something else, but I feel like weird things can happen, so I just put an asterisk when I say that, because while I did a little bit of testing to get everything on other distros with a VM, I'm still just putting asterisks on everything, because after I got the Docker Compose working, I pretty much did the rest of everything on Debian.
Depending on your session manager, you may have to restart the whole session manager to get into the new portal.
Yes.
My session manager is non-existent.
Oh, okay.
Sweet.
My session is managed by my TTY.
That's a choice. I would just keep going and just leave people behind.
Yeah, I'm at this step.
All right, yeah.
Done? Who's doing and who's not doing? I just like to watch. You're done? Oh, you're just watching.
All right.
Let's go watch.
Yeah. So,
No.
but yeah, it'll be pretty simple. You'll just go to localhost 8080, and it'll tell you to press the setup the wiki link. And okay, I think you're close. So.
Still forbidden? What? No. Whatever, I'll just rebuild it.
All right, yeah. I'll just keep going anyway. So once you're in there, you'll see a language setup screen, which is pretty self-explanatory. So, and then once you're past that, you'll see the Welcome to MediaWiki screen. Welcome. You shouldn't really have to do anything about anything here if you're using my Docker Compose. If there's like one warning, I think it's like about the image directory or something, I actually have an Apache configuration added to the Docker Compose just to make that bit behave correctly, so you don't actually have to be concerned about that. Once you're past all this stuff, you can move on to the to database screen. So now we just have to set up the database. Let me do it on my follow along. I'll just show you my follow along install, So yeah, once you're on this screen, keep it selected to MariaDB, MySQL are compatible. The database host will be, instead of local we have it set to DB3306 in the Docker container. So, and then we're just going to leave it called MyWiki. And finally, for the user account for installation, so I left it at root, and then the password as defined in the database's Docker file is mwikitalk. So yeah, there's absolutely no capitalization. It is just mwikitalk. No spaces, yep. And so once you press continue, keep it on, use the same account as for installation. And so then press continue. For the name of the wiki, it really doesn't darn matter. I'm just going to leave it at test wiki. You can come up with the weirdest name you can think of if you want to. It really doesn't matter because it'll be different for each application. And then we're gonna. All right. So yeah, the first steps were Let's see. Let me see what screen you're on real quick. Oh, okay. Yeah. Not too far. No, you're good. You just need to, change localhost to DB port 3306. And then for the password, it's just mwikitalk. It's defined in the Docker file.
Okay.
All right, and then press continue for the, yep. And now you're on the same step as everyone, and So yeah, now that you're on that, so we can name the wiki, set up your administrator account. I'm just going to use whatever I usually use. You don't need to put in your email address. This right here is like the shared data option. It's basically similar to like a distro, like Debian's popularity contest packaging nature. It's like not actually like doing anything in particular to like spy on you. It's just to see like which extensions are the most popular. I still like to turn it off, but it's not, the shared data about this installation with MediaWiki developers is not as sinister as it sounds. And then make sure to leave this on ask me more questions, because we have to enable a few of the built-in extensions. So yeah, anyhow, then we're on to the options screen. For the user rights profile, it really doesn't matter all that much because we're not going to actually be exposing this to the internet. This is just going to be for ourselves. So yeah, basically OpenWiki is just anyone can edit, sort of the Wikipedia model, but you generally do want to tighten a few permissions on a few key pages first. There's then account creation required, pretty self-explanatory. Then there's authorized authors only where you manually enable it. And then there's private wiki if no one but yourself is planning to use that. You should be able to fix this in the config if you ever wanted to. You should be able to change it in the local settings.php if you want to. OpenWiki is probably just going to cause you the least misery in the long run. For the license, for now, just turn it on, leave it on, You can probably just leave it on no license unless, you know, you want to set it to, like, Creative Commons. I don't know why you'd want to set a stupid demo wiki to Creative Commons, but you be you. So for email settings, you'll want to disable outbound email. Now make sure to select a default skin. I personally really like Timeless. Vector is the default on Wikipedia. Monobook is really retro looking. It's what I use on Wikipedia, but it is not it's the old Wikipedia skin, but probably for usability's sake. Yeah, I like it, but yeah, Wikipedia has multiple skins. Like you can't download custom skins to Wikipedia. I think Wikipedia does support CSS though. Yeah, you. Yep. Yeah, it does have themes you can select between. And so yeah, these are the standard ones included in the MediaWiki install, and these are basically the same ones available on Wikipedia. I'm going to go with Timeless. You go with whatever the heck you want. So now for the extensions, I just have a list to... So for the extensions, so there's a few ones. So under the special pages, you'll want to enable the Echo extension and the linter extension, because the linter extension just enables code linting. Under editors, you'll just want to enable all of these. So the code editor is what it sounds like. It's for like editing like Lua scripts or CSS. Visual editor is the GUI editor. It's basically just using Wikipedia like a word processor. And wiki editor is the basic, well, slightly above basic, but it's the wiki text editor you'll use when you're editing the raw wiki text. And then for parser hooks, you'll want to enable parser functions, which is basically a macro system. So like it allows you to do stuff like if statements and whatever on your wiki text page for conditional formatting. Wikipedia generally recommends you don't use these directly on a page. You mostly would want to use parser functions and templates. And so then you want to have syntax highlight and the template data and Scribuntu enabled. Especially template data, syntax highlight are not as necessary, but parser functions and Scribuntu you definitely want on. You very much want to make sure those are working. And so then for media handlers, doesn't particularly matter. We don't need to prevent spam on our little test wiki. And then finally we want discussion tools. We probably won't use it much, but just in case you mess around. And then multimedia viewer for images. And then finally text extracts, mostly because the not visual editor, source editor depends on it, and then we'll enable file upload so we can try images. You probably don't need to enable instant commons. And then, for the sake of time, I'm probably not going to do any personalization, but if you want to throw in a weird logo real quick into resources/assets, you can totally do that. It is also, again, possible to change most of this after. You'll just be editing the local settings.php text file, which isn't that horrible to deal with. It's all pretty well documented. But, so yeah, we're just going to leave the logo on default for now, which is just this little funny placeholder logo. For advanced configuration, leave this on default. So, is everyone to this point? Alrighty. Now we're going to press this big old continue button and finish the install. Yep. Now, when you press continue, it's going to have you download this local settings.php. This right here is probably actually the main reason why I have our MediaWiki install mounted as a Docker volume instead of it just inside the Docker container, is because you need to save the local settings.php to the right location, and this is probably the least complex way to do it. So yeah, so you'll go into our talk repo and go into your W folder and put it in, and you will save local settings.php in the root of your wiki folder. So, have we all done that? Local settings.php contains your configuration.
Why is that the installation process?
For several reasons. One, the detection. This application generates that config file, but also the other thing is, if you say didn't want to go through this process, like let's say you had an existing wiki and you didn't want to, and so you had a backup of the database, you could have a backup of the database, a backup of the local settings.php, a list of the extensions you had installed, and the images backed up. And so if you didn't want to go through the installation process and you just wanted to restore a wiki, or you had settings you already liked, you could just plot the local settings.php text file there, and you don't have to go through all this. Also keep in mind, we used the GUI configurator because it's just the most efficient way to do it, but there is a CLI setup program. So does that answer your question?
Yes, but I still feel like after you're done installing it, you could just save the file and run. Like, why do you have to download it and put it in the right place?
I think for part of it is just permission scope. Like, it's generally not a good idea to have MediaWiki able to modify its own files, because you could theoretically have a vulnerability that involves tricking one part of the wiki into modifying the other. So it's better for the user to manually do it. It's also, yeah, I'd say that's probably the main architectural reason. There's some things about it. Also, having it in a local settings.php does allow you, like, if you say, you can say do a few, like, quick hacks to your wiki if you need to, like, if you're just experimenting with something or whatnot. And so local settings.php does come in handy for that. So, like, those are probably the biggest pros for having to download the file like that, because this is basically just a config file generator, because generally there's not going to be a good default config file for every use case. So, like, you generally want to configure it. So, but yeah, once we have that config file in place, we can enter the wiki, and assuming you've done it right, it won't error out, and we'll instead just get a nice wiki homepage. All right. So, yeah, you must have accidentally disabled it. So, yeah, is it good for everybody? Alrighty. So, yep, we got a MediaWiki installer. And now we're going to go to actually using this thing. So basically our process is going to consist of basic making/page editing. I'm sure you guys have all used a MediaWiki. A lot of you have used a MediaWiki at least once, like whether it's Wikipedia or something else. So some of these might be familiar to you, but then we'll kind of go through the concept of how namespaces work, because it's very important. And then, I'm missing a content here. We'll set up a template, and then we'll test a template to show MediaWiki's templating functionality. Then we'll show off Scribuntu, which is a system for Lua scripting that's used in a lot of MediaWiki stuff. And then finally, I'll show you how to set up an extension and talk about what extensions can do. So they'll all be very basic templates, very basic scripts, very basic extensions. Like, they're all just a simple hello world. So basic editing, it's pretty dead obvious. So, well, one, I'd recommend you log into the admin you created, but you probably won't be locked out. If you set it to OpenWiki, you wouldn't be locked out if you somehow... Okay, wait, what password did I use? But... Okay, yeah, I just used my standard. So yeah, you'll just press edit and... So yeah, if you can press edit and type something. So I just typed, these are some meaningless words. And then you'll press. So it's pretty much just like a standard, it's pretty standard rich text editor word processor stuff for the most part, with a few extra features like, well, the bar would add some if you had a few more extensions, but so you could import a template, you can do code comments, the gallery element's pretty standard for like a site editor, I guess, but yeah, I'd say template's probably the main unique thing here. So once you've written something, just to confirm, we know, you can type a summary of what you changed. You could honestly leave it blank. I'm just going to do that. And so that's very, very basic MediaWiki editing. You can also create a new page by just... Probably the quickest way to do it, there is a specific special page you can use, but the quickest way to do it would be just to search for the page name, get the no results matching the query, and create test page. So, you know, I guess, how do we feel now? I mean, I think it's this is probably the very simplest part of this presentation, and honestly, a lot of this presentation isn't that complex, so. All right, we're going to move on to, we're now going to go to the source editor, so try out, so basically the visual editor is not enough to do everything MediaWiki can do. Like, if you're editing a spelling error, you can probably use the visual editor just fine. In fact, you probably should just use the visual editor if you're like doing very basic proofreading. However, there's limitations, like you can't, there's a few things that are just impossible to do in the visual editor, and you have to go look at it with the source editor. So to go to the source editor, you'll go to a drop down and switch to source editing. So, well, you can press edit source to go to it, but you could also, there will be this drop down in visual editor where you could switch to it. So once we're in the visual editor, the source editor, you could enable a preview. So you can have some what you see is what you get text. And honestly, rather than tell you about the syntax of wiki text, as we go through this, I just recommend you honestly just pull up this cheat sheet, because I feel like that's getting... I feel like it's going to take up a lot of time to explain everything, and the cheat sheet does it concisely, so just tell me when you're done pulling up that cheat sheet. I don't know why I even put the QR code, I just kind of needed to fill up space.
To have a QR code. Have a Mr. Beast going.
Yeah. No, not Mr. Beast, the other one. Mr. The fake Mr. Beast, yeah.
The who?
Yeah, so yeah, once you got the cheat sheet set up, so we'll just do something simple like, it does have a bold and italic function, so you could set it to italic or bold. There's support for links to other pages. It's kind of like Markdown, but weird. So that's my summary on wiki text. If you want to get into the nitpicks of wiki text, again, there's that cheat sheet and there's plenty of documentation online. we're now going to go on to something just a little more interesting about how MediaWiki actually works. So MediaWiki is split into namespaces in order to like keep different types of content sorted out. So you have the main namespace, which, so conventionally, again, like it'll be, namespace will be in this format of name of the namespace, page name. The biggest exception is the main namespace where your regular articles would be. So that's why you wouldn't have, so that's why a Wikipedia article, you wouldn't have to have main article name. You could just search the article name. But so the reason namespaces exist is for other kinds of articles. So, for instance, so we have talk pages, which are discussions about main pages, and then we also have there's a dedicated namespace for the talk pages of other namespaces, excluding the talk namespaces, of course, unless you really want a talk page on your talk page. And then there's the MediaWiki namespace, which just contains various UI settings. There's the template namespace, which is where you'd create a template. And then there's the category namespace, which is where you'd list items in a category. We're probably not going to look too much into categories because it's not it's pretty simple and it's not the most interesting thing to present on. And there's special pages, which are wiki administration pages. So just to get namespace in action, show namespaces in action, we're going to go to our special version page, which and so this will show, in addition to license information, so yeah, once you're on this page, this will show in addition to license information. So it'll show the software your wiki is running on top of. And there are ways to block this if you really were paranoid about someone knowing the exact Apache version you're running on. But I mean, it's just security by obscurity BS anyway. And then there's this stuff, just entry point URLs, and so then we have the list of installed skins, and the list of installed extensions, the PHP libraries it's using, and finally parser function hooks. We'll get into this later. And you can almost instantly tell if any site is using MediaWiki by, so like on Wikipedia, for instance, special version, or we'll go to ArchWiki. Yep. Or I think TMBW actually, partly to combat like a bunch of content scraper bots basically DDoSing them. I think they may have actually blocked it, at least to people who don't have an account. Yeah, I think if you didn't have an account on TMBW, I think it would try to block you from this, but you can see they are running the really so we're on 1.43, and then ArchWiki's on like 1.44, the current stable version. Wikipedia's on a development branch. But TMBW is on 1.25, which was released in 2015. And the reason they've never updated it is because at some point they went idle for a little bit, and the transition's just really difficult for them because they have a bunch of stuff based on old features. So it might eventually happen, but yeah, for now it's a little embarrassing to see one of my favorite wikis using a kind of crusty version. I guess I was wrong. I know there are some pages that do have blocks like I was mentioning, but I guess not special version. All right. So continuing, we're now going to talk a little bit about templates. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the info boxes on Wikipedia, or most wikis, a lot of wikis, and I've just put this example here, and I'll just leave it at that. These are not built into MediaWiki. They're actually templates. And so MediaWiki actually uses a robust templating system. It is possible to actually import the templates that Wikipedia uses into our wiki, but it's not something I think we could just casually do in the scope of a demo like this and stay within roughly the time constraints of the meeting. So it's not impossible. There's a process, but it's just such a long and long process of drudgery that it's probably not worth it to do it in this presentation. So we're just going to create a basic Hello World template. So what we'll do is, create a page called, honestly, whatever the heck you want, just remember the name of it. I'm just going to call it template Hello World. And so the way templates are, on a very basic level, are written are, you'll basically have in 3 brackets. Oh gosh, I made a typo there. It's supposed to be in 3 brackets. But you'll have your parameter in 3 sets of brackets, and the parameters put into your template will be substituted there. So here we're just doing a very, very, very simple hello world. This can do much more complex though. Like I said, parser functions have if macros, lots of things. So templates can get really intricate. If you really want to see how intricate, just go to an existing wiki, search up a template, look in the source code. Good luck. And so for using templates, there are 2 ways to use a template. So you can go into Visual Editor and just press the Insert Template button and search for the template name and type in the parameter. But the quick and easy way to do it... Oh, let me actually get the template code in. So yeah, the quick and dirty way to do it in, not that dirty really, way to do it in the source editor would be just to, so you'll call templates with double brackets, you put the template name right here, and then you use the vertical line character to separate the template name from its parameters, and you would, if there were multiple parameters, you would have multiple brackets, and then you would type the name here. I've messed up something in the template. Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I thought I tested this beforehand. Oh, wait. Is it? Oh, wait. I have to put name equals. That's it. So yeah, once you have the template type like this with parameter name, you'll type something like this, hello world, and then name equals, I have it set to Vic Fontaine in this case. So that is basically the gist of MediaWiki templates. Again, they can get a lot more elaborate, like, oh wait, I wanted to go to Wikipedia. So this is a simpler template, but oh wait, so a lot of templates on Wikipedia call other templates, but like you can see, so this template calls another template. here's an example of the if macro that can be used. So this is I'd say a more reasonable complexity template for a large wiki. Yep. So now we're going to move on to modules. So in essence, MediaWiki has a built-in extension called Scribunto that allows us to write Lua scripts so this would be for usually more like programmatically generating wiki text. And so these are in their own namespace called module. So yeah, we'll copy you'll go to a page, create just module hello world, and type this in. This won't. Oh wait. I'll just warn you ahead of time, when I type this in, I will probably mess it up because honestly, I don't use Lua that much. In fact, is it pronounced Lua or Luau? I can't remember. That shows you how much I use Lua.
They're two different languages. You're correct on both of them.
So yeah. So yeah, you would usually access in Lua you would access parameters put into the module with the frame.args, and it just returns it as an array. Lua's one of those freaky languages that has index, I think. Yeah, so yeah, it's index 1. I can't remember if it's, again, this is how little I know Lua, really, because I can't remember if Lua is one of those freaky languages that starts at index 1, or if index 0 is just the name of the module. So yeah. I'm just making sure I'm doing this right, because again, I really don't know. So yeah, basically what this code does, you have to create this variable at the beginning, because P is basically just the standard variable that a MediaWiki module will export its available functions to. And so then the function has to be called p dot something. I really don't care what it is, just remember it. And then the module has to return P. There's a little console at the bottom you can use to make sure it's actually working. So let's say, oh wait. Okay. Like I said, this is actually not one of the features I use the most in MediaWiki. I tend to use other things, but Scribunto is still a useful thing you at least need to know exists. But yeah, this code should be correct. So now we can go on to a page, and how you would invoke it is, so there's a parser function that the Scribunto module introduces called invoke, hashtag invoke, and so you do hashtag invoke, the name of the module, and then the name of the function you're calling from the module, and then finally the argument you're passing. So we'll do Klingon General Martok, for instance. So yep, we have this, and this prints, hello world, my name is Martok. So yeah, extremely simple module. Obviously, I think it's more apparent how a Lua module can get more intricate and do more practical things. And so it is very much just typically used for when you need to like programmatically generate wiki text. For instance, the MediaWiki info box template is actually built around a decently complex module, and so then the info box template is actually called by templates for each specific type of info box. So now we're going to move on to extensions. As we said before, MediaWiki is part of the virtue of MediaWiki is its extension abilities. So MediaWiki extensions, like MediaWiki itself, are usually written in PHP. I say usually, I mean all MediaWiki extensions are written almost entirely in PHP, except for maybe some. Actually, yeah, I don't think you're even allowed to do raw SQL queries. I think you could get a working extension with it, but you want to use the database extraction layer these days, and it will generate your queries with what you input to the abstraction layer. But yeah, so where you would install extensions, it's under the extensions folder, under the MediaWiki install folder, and so each extension, at the absolute bare minimum, is going to have an extension.json that just tells MediaWiki an extension is there, gives it the name of the extension, the version of the extension, etc., and tells it where its other source files are. And then the other one is, it'll have PHP code. You technically don't need to have this called include so long as you specify it properly in the JSON file, but as in a lot of projects, includes is the conventional place where you would put your PHP source files for MediaWiki extensions. So real extensions are obviously going to have a much crazier directory structure because there's going to be a folder for database queries, there's going to be more JSON files, but this is like the bare minimum you could get for like a little toy extension. So if you're installing a third-party extension, we're going to install a simple test extension, which I call Hello World extension. I'm sorry for making you do Hello World 3 times. So I have this just directly into the demo directory. So you'll go to the demo directory, you'll copy Hello World extensions to the folder to under the MediaWiki extensions folder, however you want to. So I'll do the copy real quick. And so then, once you have that installed, to actually use the extension, you have to use a little function in our local settings.php called wfload extension. So open up your local settings.php, scroll to the very bottom, and you'll see a bunch of these. And you'll copy and paste and add another extension called, and we'll use the name of my extension. All right. So assuming you've done that right, you should be able to navigate to the special version page, and you should now be able to find Hello World extension in the installed extensions. Congratulations, I've tricked you into putting my name in your MediaWiki install. But anyhow, yeah, if you mess that up, and actually I'm just going to show you what happens real quick by typing a bunch of garbage, it would cause your MediaWiki install to error out, and there are sometimes you can turn it into verbose mode to diagnose errors. You obviously want to make sure this never happens on a production server, but yeah, as soon as the local settings.php is fixed, it'll just go right back on working. So now we're going to actually use this extension. So let me go back to special version. So it introduces another parser function called say hello. It's spelled wrong down here, and I don't know why. But that is roughly the name of the extension function. So to actually use it, so go into the source editor. This is one of the things you absolutely have to use the source editor for, because it's the only way to to use a parser tag. So we'll do hashtag say hello, which is the function introduced by my extension. And then you have to have, there are ways to disable this, but for a very simple extension, you generally have to put the colon before the arguments. You can see this also does this because this is implemented by the Ubuntu extension. You have to have the colon here. I have, in my extension, I have it set up to have a default name, but if you then type a name, you can also do, it's not important that you know how this function works. It's just important that you can install and use an extension, because if you could do this, you can probably figure out any other MediaWiki extension. And it's also important to understand this if you want to develop a MediaWiki extension. So, any questions? Yeah. So the reason we do in this case, this extension and all the templates pretty much do the same thing as each other. But the reason you'd say like I said, the reason you'd have an extension instead of just a Lua script or a template is only extensions are really capable of doing stuff like programmatically accessing pages, creating new special pages so that you can configure the extension, doing database queries, creating new content models. So you can actually have an extension that supports creating, like, say, MediaWiki pages in Markdown, or say you want to show a C file. There actually is an extension for using Markdown as the content model for MediaWiki pages. It hasn't been updated in 6 years, and you're going to have a fun time actually trying to use it for anything practical, but it is technically possible. It's just wiki text for actual content is the standard. But yeah, so like extensions are probably the most powerful form of customizability for MediaWiki, and the way which you would develop new functionality for MediaWiki that you're not like merging into main. So, okay, I've been talking up the functionality of MediaWiki. It's now time to talk crap about it. So, one of the more annoying things is it feels like there's a lot of things people expect of a wiki that aren't in there. For instance, although I kind of get it that you'd want to customize an info box, I really don't get why like infobox isn't like a default extension or built into MediaWiki, honestly. Like on some technical level, I get it. Each wiki is going to have their own needs for an info box, but it's like for a noob setting up, way back when I was a noob setting up MediaWiki for the very first time, it kind of drove me nuts. Of course, it isn't that bad to create your own info boxes if you know basic HTML. You can create an info box template and just create a new one for each type of thing you're doing. But yeah, it still drives me a little nuts. Now the next thing, this is probably arguably much worse. Alright, let me speed run it. Arguably much worse is Ubuntu only supports Lua scripting. It's technically designed to support others, but has never had anything else. And specifically, it is stuck on Lua 5.1, which went EOL in 2012. And So there's a few things about it. In the MediaWiki distribution, they literally just include the binaries, and it will just use those by default. And all they have is one CVE patch from 2014. That's it. Now, the security solution to this is they just use they just created their own PHP extension called Lua Sandbox, which we have installed. But again, it's very weird that not only are we stuck with Lua for scripting on what's otherwise a powerful wiki, but we're stuck with one very oddly specific version. And the last thing is, extension and skin development is an absolute pain in the rear. Like, that Hello World extension, so I originally developed it over the summer. It took probably 6 hours just to find out how to actually get that working. The MediaWiki example extensions, like the official ones, are kind of horrible because they're way more complex than they need to be, and they don't really explain to you why each thing needs to be there. And so, basically, trial and error was the only way I could really figure out how a MediaWiki extension actually works and what's the bare minimum. All right, we have, 1 minute, 2 minutes for questions? All right, questions, if you have any. Yes?
MediaWiki saves your entire history of your page. How does it do that? Like, is your whole page is in a database like its current state, and then it just stores diffs of all your previous edits, like kind of how Git does it? Like what?
Probably. I actually have never gotten that deep into the MediaWiki architecture. I've mostly done it from a user perspective with a little bit of extension development, but I would actually have to look into the architecture. It probably has to be decently similar to Git, but yeah, you can see every edit. That's actually something I'd need to research. So, any other questions? I imagine a lot of you guys are fixing to get something to eat, so. All right, so I guess that's it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for suffering with me.
No, it's a really good presentation.
Thanks, yeah. And then this is copyright attributions, just a lot of creativity. Creative Commons stuff. Alrighty.